You can absolutely conquer whatever it is you choose to confront. In this show, we talk PTG, we listen and believe, we support and empower. Whether you have experienced domestic violence personally or not, someone you know has. Your circle of family, friends, acquaintances, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience domestic violence at some point in their life. Physical abuse is only one of the many forms of domestic violence. Survivors also report experience of verbal, emotional, spiritual, sexual, financial, electronic, and so much more. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It can leave you traumatized and devastated, mentally, emotionally, financially. You can find yourself homeless, jobless, helpless. The list can go on. There's blankets of insecurities, triggers, doubts, and other residual effects that become hurdles that impact our life as we do our best to move on. Many people associate butterflies with a sense of freedom. We've been taught along the way to focus on the transformation that takes place inside of the cocoon. I invite you to take a moment to conceptualize all the odds the caterpillar was up against and needed to defeat in order to get to a safe place, to build its cocoon and actually experience the transformation. My name is A. Garcia. I am a mother and survivor of a double attempted homicide. Now, I'm dedicating my life to take yours to the next level by experiencing post-traumatic growth to begin a new chapter in your life. Let's get started on this journey together. Confronting Domestic Violence is a 501c3. All contributions, volunteers, and sponsorships are welcomed. It takes a community to make a difference. Nobody should suffer alone. Please scan the QR code. Hey, Garcia here, and thank you for tuning in. What we cover here is not intended to ignite any triggers. For what you want to conquer, you must confront. Many of times, another person's experience became a life-saving resource for someone else. Welcome to Confronting Domestic Violence. Without any further ado, I am going to introduce a special guest today, Ali. Welcome, Ali. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It is my privilege and an honor. So we were talking a bit backstage and we realized there's several stories and experiences that you can pull from to share with the audience. So I am just going to leave that up to you as to which bucket you want to pull out of, and we'll just ask questions and share from there. So if you want to jump right in or give some background, please feel free to go right ahead. This is a place of comfort and respect.
So in the topic of domestic violence or either having gone through it myself or being exposed, started, I guess, as a child, not necessarily being physically abused, but I witnessed a lot of verbal and emotional abuse. At times, different people, maybe physical abuse that they've gotten into things. And then that kind of led me into my own situations as I got older, into being in somewhat of physical and verbal and mental situations with either my partners, but it all kind of started with kind of being exposed to it
as a child.
Yeah.
So would you say that it started as teenager? Were your teenage years a little worse than maybe what you experienced when you started getting into adulthood?
So the teenage years, like my teenage years going into like my early adulthood, I just like certain family members, they would have spouses or be in relationships, and whether it be argument or being physical with each other, I've witnessed that. And then it would be like fine for a while and they would go back into kind of being toxic to one another, whether it be verbal, and then it would get physical. And it was like a cycle over and over. It continued into from teenage years into my younger adult years.
Did it seem almost normal? Did it seem like there was anything wrong with that, since that's what you were exposed to almost all your life at that time?
Obviously, what on TV, what's supposed to be quote unquote perfect, or what's supposed to be like an ideal relationship, and then you see what your reality is. And it's not always like that. But then as a child or a young adult, you're also taught like what happens in this house stays in this house. So you learn to adapt and kind of, this is my normal. Oh, they do that. Oh, this that just happens kind of thing.
Yeah, I've actually that is a underlying comment as well. What happens here stays here. And so I know
Mhm.
sometimes when you hear that as a child, and then when you find yourself in a situation as an adult, it's not that you feel like, oh, what happens here stays here. It's you realize, oh, okay, maybe that's why that's what was being taught to me, because it's
Mhm.
not something that is considered socially acceptable if it's put out there.
Yeah.
And and I think that kind of definitely feeds the stigma of domestic violence in the society and personally. I think that we
Yeah.
develop a personal stigma behind all of that as well.
No, I think that you're right. We do. It's kind of like a taught behavior, kind of like hush, you don't say things that would people would frown upon kind of outside in public, like our business is our business kind of thing. But I don't think it's a healthy thing to go through and to learn. I'm trying to, even as an adult now, in my mid 30s, like still trying to learn how to unlearn certain
Mhm.
behaviors that I've saw or I've seen all my life to be different and change the way I am with my own relationship or with anything with my kids and how they perceive different things and how I perceive different things and just trying to move forward versus having those kind of traumas.
Yes, oh my gosh, and we'll get into those traumas as well. And it's also, I wanted to say also, you were saying so many different things. As an adult now, is how I'm trying to teach the kids now, is how I'm trying to see things for myself right now. It's, yeah, after we leave the nest and we become women in the world, it's, yeah, oh my gosh, all of a sudden we didn't
Mhm.
realize now we're responsible for raising ourselves the rest of our lives. We can continue
Mhm.
on. And then, like you said, unlearn the things that we were taught at that younger age. But it sounds like you're breaking generational chains. You're changing the paradigm of what has been generational in your family or in your life for so long. And now you're doing things differently and consciously for your family.
Yes. Yeah,
And
that's
that is like so
that's the real.
applaudable. So healthy. And that's a part of post traumatic growth. You learned from your traumas and now you're doing something different to prevent those traumas in your children. And then you're even willing
Yeah.
to sit here and talk about it and help other women and listeners around the world. It takes courage.
Yeah, I do feel guilty sometimes though because it's not like parenting doesn't come with a handbook and life doesn't come with a handbook on what you do, how to get out of situations and things like that. But what you expose, learning from myself and being exposed to certain things as a child, like I have been guilty of repeating that behavior and exposing my children to that. And I do feel guilty about that. And I do have open dialogue with them as to what's acceptable and what's not, even as a parent, like to them saying that I'm sorry for certain behaviors and really trying my best to teach them better than what I was taught or what I did or certain situations and things like that so that they don't hold on to certain things like I have.
Yeah. So you're teaching them emotional intelligence and positive problem solving skills. Back in our day, I hate saying that because it sounds, but mental health wasn't a thing.
Yeah, no, and I feel like even now, like certain cultural backgrounds and things like that, it's still like a stigma kind of thing. Oh no, you don't talk about stuff like that. I feel like it's very important. I've been through a lot, like when it comes to like mental health. So I don't want my kids or like even myself to feel like I'm either putting myself on the back burner or not taking care of myself, my mental health, because if you don't have your mental health together, like nothing else is going to go right. You have to have yourself together first. And it took me a while to learn that, but I'm still learning that. But I do feel better about myself and the way I go about things, like acknowledging that that's a stigma, that doesn't matter. This is what matters. your mental health, keeping your peace, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say you can move a million times, but you always live in your head. And if you don't have your mental space in order, where are you walking? What are you doing? How are you responding? Because what you're thinking is how you are walking, navigating in the world, and responding to people. And if it's not healthy, then you already know where that's leading. And I know that you were exposed to some severe domestic violence at one point in your life. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, so there's been a few instances where it has gotten like really physical to the point where I was scared, not even for myself, but like the family member involved. Two instances, the same family member with two different partners at two different times. Just the physicalness of seeing things like them being so physically toxic in front of a baby or children and me, and trying to calm everyone down and everyone screaming and crying and things like that. It's almost like a horror movie, like watching things like that happen, and like stuff that you see on TV, or a fight scene like happening in front of you. It's scary. I had a situation where one of my family members, I guess the worst of it, was doused with lighter fluid in an argument that turned physical, more so physical as far as like this family member trying to restrain and calm the person down, but then was doused with lighter fluid. And me, obviously, caring and not wanting the kids to see things, like I kind of lost my mind and then was kind of put into that situation. But yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And that it sometimes certain instances replays, like
Right.
they, in a blink of an eye, anything could have happened. So when they're arguing with each other and getting upset with each other to try to set someone on fire in a household full of kids, that's crazy to me. And I had to live through that. I had to get over that. And then having the kids and things like that see that, I wonder how they are now from that.
Okay, because if you're comfortable enough, if I can ask a few more questions in regarding that scene. So it was their children that were in the house and a witness?
Yes, I'll just say it. I lived with my brother for a period of time when my relationship wasn't going right. And I had my own situations and stuff to deal with. I moved in with him because he's my older brother. He gave me like refuge and things like that there. And I had two small children at that time. So I
Mhm.
lived with him and his spouse, and they their relationship from the get-go was toxic, but it would be like stuff that I've seen a lot, like where it would go up and down like a roller coaster. One moment they would be fine and act like nothing happened, and the next they would be arguing and fighting each other and things like that. But this kind of took a head because I had my two infant children there, and they had three of their adolescent children, and one was a baby, one was an adolescent, one was like a teenager. Kids there arguing and fighting and cursing, and not like a knife was brought out and lighter fluid was brought out, and these kids are like losing their minds, and I'm trying to calm everybody down at the same time. My brother's trying to stay calm, and because there was, whatever the situation is, I feel like in a relationship, yes, people do things to each other that are toxic to each other, but then I don't feel like it should be done in front of kids. And this night it just came to a head where it was literally in front of everyone, like not how it normally is where they like argue in private or things like that. And it frightened the kids, it frightened me. It was a scene out of a movie. Like I thought my brother was going to be stabbed, I thought that he was going to be set on fire, which then caused me to react because he's my family member. Obviously I don't want him to die. So it did a lot. And then I have my two infant children there that are screaming and crying, the teenagers trying to calm everyone down, but she's screaming and crying, and it was a mess.
Oh
The
my
police
gosh,
had,
I have chills all over my body. I'm sitting here while you're describing, and I can only imagine the scene. It's like I'm visualizing the children screaming and crying and running and just trying to do mitigate everything, because I know, like, children have no fear. So to them, the maybe smelling the lighter fluid meant nothing. They just knew they could feel the energy and trying to, like what you're saying, intercept and mitigate that fight. Meanwhile, they're looking at you for help and comfort. And then these two adults just don't see anything because they're just going at each other, and, one trying to defend themselves, and the other one trying to take the other one out. This is extreme. My gosh, I cannot even think about or fathom how you held your stuff together to be logical and know what steps to take and how to, like you said, soothe the kids, protect your brother, try to calm the situation down. Somebody, you're saying, called the police, so they showed up, and then what? Because I'm sorry, I just wanted to say this: domestic violence is the most riskiest call for police officers to respond to, because when people's emotions are involved, nobody knows how far somebody else will go with for that love that they feel or those emotions
Yeah.
that is going on. It's like they have 2 seconds to figure out, if two people, have a weapon, which one is the aggressor. And it could be either
Hmm.
one, male or female, to be honest. So please go ahead.
The sad part about it all, though, like when the police got there, obviously, like we had like what we did, like a game night, movie night kind of thing that we would do. So there were other people there that ended up leaving, but the kids and everyone were involved. Obviously, there was like drinking, like we had some drinks and food and things like that. But when the police got there, it was like the woe is like the person likes to turn on the "oh, I'm the victim" all the time kind of thing, and it pissed me off because me seeing everything and having the kids see everything and then having to calm them down when the police got there, they instantly assumed that my brother was like the person, like, oh, so they handcuffed him. They were like in my face. And at this point, I'm pissed because all this stuff is happening. So I ended up, I think I maybe shoved her or I was in her face or something. The police were like threatening to arrest me. And I was still trying to gather my stuff because at that point she'd leave my house and, this like that. And I had to be like, she's the one who tried to set him on fire. She tried to stab him in front of these kids. Hello. And at this point, hysterical. My children are in this home. I have all my things in this home. This is where I've been living for the past few months. Whatever happens with you guys' relationship is your relationship. But then when you pull me into that and make me a part of that, it becomes my issue.
Absolutely, because that's the environment also where your kids are.
Yeah. And it was just toxic for everybody. And no, now I guess things are fine, but it just makes me think back their children, which are my nieces and nephews. Do they ever think about those things? Do they ever think about the arguments that happened? Do they remember? Now situations have presented themselves where my brother is now, his life is forever changed. Not even from this incident, but his life is forever changed. Like a few years back, he got into an accident where he was hit by a driver going almost 60 miles an hour on his bike. Him, and they honestly, they didn't in the hospital treat him like, they didn't treat his injuries. Their main concern was to keep him alive. So because they thought he was going to die, like everything said that he was going to die, like he is forever changed because of that. He's not able to walk, and he has to have like multiple surgeries on his pelvis, which he doesn't want to do anymore because I guess the pain, but because he was so damaged from the accident and they thought that he was going to die, their main concern was just keeping him alive. So now that he's alive, now what? So this person, his spouse, even now will say things like, maybe it's karma, or all the things mentally that you've done to me, maybe this is now payback kind of thing. And it's sad because she says these things to their offspring who now have to live like they see their father like that. And it's just disheartening for me, for
I'm hearing
everybody.
you, right? Because you're saying he can't even walk, which means he's in a wheelchair or laying down all the time.
Yeah, he's not even in a wheelchair. He's literally bed down for the rest of his life. If I mean, he could, but that would take willpower. And at this point, my brother mentally is not in the capacity to have that willpower, I guess.
Would it be safe to assume that it could potentially be because he would end up going back into that same type of environment, even in that capacity of his well-being?
I honestly, I know that he would. And that's the scary part. Like domestic violence or being exposed or whatever, it's not just on one hand. It can also be the other, like the reverse. Everybody has their own part in it. And it doesn't just happen to women, it also happens to men. It could happen to anybody. And
Right.
being a victim myself and then seeing things happen and then it play out differently, like it's I have I guess a well-rounded view of how things can go either way. And it's sad. Either way, it's sad.
Yeah,
And
you're
like
absolutely right.
how the chips fall now, it's just yeah, it's disheartening.
Wow. That I can't even wrap my head around that. That is really disheartening. I can say I'm happy that he was not started on fire, that you were there to prevent that.
Oh,
Maybe that was your reason for being there, was to save his life in that capacity. Unfortunately, I'm hearing what happened later. Yeah, and then for the outcome to be what it is, and for that not to be enough, because sometimes death is what, or near death is what helps people have a better grounding and understanding of the value of life.
mhm.
And when you're that close to death, it usually brings whatever drama or negativity. It allows you to put that to the side and see the bigger picture and allow an opportunity to make peace or make amends and try to patch things up to be right within, morally speaking, spiritually speaking, for the kids. So many reasons why. And it's very unfortunate that I'm hearing that is not the case, that the spouse still has some spite or bitterness based on whatever occurred in the past. And here's your brother choosing not to have the willpower, knowing that the end result would be going back to that environment. So staying in
Oh,
the
he said
hospital is
that.
better.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's literally said those things. And it makes me sad because I kind of watched like we've been through as a family, we've been through a lot. We've been through so much. Particularly my brother has been through a lot. And so seeing him in a situation where he was stable, he was somewhat happy, and then like certain situations happen. Like nobody's perfect, obviously, but then seeing his life now and for him to say, I just will stay here because if I leave, if I do get in a wheelchair and if I do can live on my own and this and that, like where am I gonna go? What am I gonna do? Go back to the same thing?
yeah, that's not healing. That's not a place to heal.
It's not. And then obviously like a lot of the time it's sad because it's like that for a lot of different situations. Either people are afraid to leave or afraid to of change or anything, or maybe they don't have anything. And I know me personally, in situations that I have been in, it was hard for me to leave because I felt like I didn't have anything else to go to, or I would have to start over, and starting over would be harder than just putting up with certain situations or minimal arguing or things like that. But after a while, it really takes a toll on you mentally. And I have to figure that out. And I'm in a place now where no matter what situation I'm put in, whether it's my situation or someone close to me situation that I got dragged into, I'm putting me first, my mental health, so that I can raise my children to be stronger mentally than I am,
That is
that
amazing.
was. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep, that that you were. That's right. That's that past tense, because you are growing and you feel your growth. You're measuring your growth. You see it based on the responses that you're getting from your husband, your kids,
Uh,
and yourself. And I really appreciate you sharing that with me because I know we talked quite a bit backstage and you're seeking outside help as much as we can all do for ourselves because nobody knows us better than us and different things that we try. And for years and years, we'll go through that. And it takes a really strong person with courage to, first of all, be able to identify that the issue is something that is a little bit bigger than what they can do on their own independently. And seeking outside help is great. There's nothing wrong with that. That connection is something that helps you get through and navigate through some of the tools that maybe you were using, but the techniques were maybe just not as accurate as they could have been. And I'm such a huge advocate on life coaching and seeking advocacy for certain dilemmas or traumas or issues.
Mhm.
And you're living proof of that. Look at everything you shared from childhood through teenage years, adulthood, as a mom, as a sister, all of the chaos that went on in that home at the same time. And then through some of your own personal exposures and experiences of domestic violence in your own relationships. And you chose to say, hold on a second, this rings a bell. I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing that in my life. I'm not accepting that. I'm not giving that. And I'm putting my foot down and drawing the line right here because my kids will not be exposed to that. And that
Yeah.
is something that takes such strength to do because what do they say? There's no such thing as knowledge without understanding. You have to
Mhm.
understand in order to have the knowledge. And it's unfortunate sometimes that the traumas that we go through is what's giving us the wisdom. And something else that I like to say is when we come out of that trauma, like fresh out of that trauma, there's a lot of confusion and self-doubt that tags along. It's like a backpack full of it, right? Or I call it the blanket that keeps us warm. And it's not necessarily, in my opinion, it's not necessarily about, oh, I'm confused. I don't know who I am. That's okay. Because when you're in that space, you know who you're not. And when you know
Right.
who you're not, you have your boundaries so clear. And as long as you do not bend those boundaries, you won't be responsible for what happens afterwards. You can only be
Mhm.
responsible for what happens after you allow someone to break through that boundary. And I know safeguarding your heart and learning how to trust yourself again, not so much others, but yourself, takes time. And that takes even more courage because it's within.
Mhm.
And it sounds like you have done so much work around that for you as a woman, for you as a mother, for you as a wife. We say that we do things for others, but we have to do it for ourselves so that we can give that version of ourselves to those that we love and influence.
That's true. I every day get up and I make a conscious decision to try to live differently, more so for my children. Like I always put them first, even
Yeah,
sometimes before myself, but I have to sometimes put me first because if I'm not right, they're not going to be right. Like they feed off of me. I'm their mom. So I don't want them to be even in my own personal situations. Like I have been in toxic situations myself, physical situations myself, and I would never, and I said before, I have argued with my spouse in front of my children and things like that. That's not something that I'm proud of. But just watching them, like I would never want it to escalate further than that to traumatize them because I feel like I've already done enough. And for me having my own personal experiences, I would never, as a mother, want to put my children through what I've seen.
that's
So
right.
I have to make that every day to try to be better, if not for myself, for them,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
can I offer what I used to do?
Yeah.
When I knew that there was going to be a conversation that needed to take place and it was more than likely going to escalate because you know the other person. You can control yourself, but sometimes you know that you cannot control anybody else. And so when I knew that was going to potentially happen, I would intentionally put the kids in a room, close the door, tell them to blast their music and have a dance party, a dance contest with each other. Then this way, I knew that they were over there having a great time, completely tuned into what they were doing, and I already knew that I had to go over there and have a conversation that was I pretty much knew was gonna be escalate.
Um,
And I'm not saying that's something that can be premeditated and happen each and every time, but when you know that you need to have a conversation and you're ready for it, that's something that, can work. And the kids won't even know, won't even hear it.
I'll have to try that.
I'm just sharing some of the things that, because as moms, we have to figure it out. We wear so many different hats and we are the glue of the family pretty much. And it's like we're protecting over here the kids, but we still have things we need to confront to seek resolution in our personal life, relationship, households. So
Yeah,
it's that balance and that protection. Like you said, it doesn't come with a book. We just have to try everything that we possibly can until we see what works and what fits in for what we're doing.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I want my kids to grow up to think that kind of behavior. Although, like you said, it's not premeditated. We don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen or how we're going to react to situations or whatever, but or how people are going to react to us. But I just don't want them to go through anything that I've experienced or think that behavior is okay, whether it be mental, emotional, and physical abuse, because mental and emotional abuse is just as bad as physical abuse.
that's right.
You literally, I feel like sometimes it's almost worse
Yeah.
uh, than getting slapped and then whatever. Like, because I'm a Capricorn, so I overthink everything as it already. I I'm an overthinker as it is already. And so then when people are manipulating you or words are said and you pair it with things that have happened in the past, it eats away at you every day sometimes. Like I have to sometimes it's a struggle and I have to literally like tap into my faith and just lean on someone bigger than me because I sometimes it's hard.
100%. It is, absolutely. And I really appreciate you being so open and vulnerable and not just sharing what you've been exposed to and what you've experienced, but also, how it affected you, how you worked through the trauma, how you're breaking these generational legacies or generational traumas, what you're doing now to navigate through it, and how you are seeking that outside help to further guide you. I always say too that you can't throw yourself the lifesaver when you're the one that's drowning. Sometimes you need to ask and
Oh
scream out for that. And it sounds like, what you're doing and applying, keyword,
yeah.
is working out. And I just love the fact that you're doing what it takes to keep that healthy mindset, to raise the kids to the best of your ability, and that's all we can do as parents. Do the best we can with what we have, and
Yeah.
as we grow, we teach and we show, and we lead by example. I know in our time, I hate saying that, in our time, do our parents do as I say, not as I do, knowing good and darn that's exactly what it's going to be. That's why you're saying it. You're the
Mm-hmm.
influence. You can say one thing, but actions speak louder than words. So regardless what you're saying, we're always going to see the actions. And kids, they pick up on that energy. You think they're not listening or paying attention, they'll be in the other room
They're smarter
dipping.
than you believe that they are. And honestly, if you think about it, like you were that way also.
Oh yeah, we just forget as adults.
Uh,
That is the truth. I wanted to ask if you have a wounds to wisdom statement you would like to share with all of our listeners today.
wounds to wisdom. No matter what you have gone through or are currently going through, there's always, if you believe in yourself, there's always like a brighter end or a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, no matter what situation, I truly feel that because experiencing the things that I've experienced, there's no way like that I thought that I would be like in the light now or moving towards the light now. Like I've been in some very dark places where the sun does not shine. And a lot of my life has been like that, and nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. It always gets better.
Yeah. And I just want to remind you that you carry the light inside. That's why you're always able to go to the light, because light attracts light. And so you carry that light within. And even though the sun hasn't been there, that's okay. It's the inside light has always been shining and will never dull out until it's our time anyways. So I really appreciate that statement. And I want to have you back on because you're a nurse and there's a lot of domestic violence that comes into those doors at the hospitals. And that's another episode, another great topic I would like to address because I'm really interested in knowing a little bit more about some of the training. I know the domestic violence is more so between patient and nurse and personnel, but I'm interested in knowing what some of the trainings are and reporting structure is if somebody comes in and shares that they're in a situation and needs help. So, if you would be interested in coming back on to talk about that topic and under that umbrella, that would be fantastic.
Sure. It's a big umbrella.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ali. It was a pleasure having you here. Thank you for all your insights, your wounds to wisdom statement, and again, just all of your openness and vulnerability and sharing deep parts of your life. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Confronting Domestic Violence is a 501c3. All contributions, volunteers, and sponsorships are welcomed. It takes a community to make a difference. Nobody should suffer alone. Please scan the QR code.